Imagine being stopped on a peaceful road and learning that the most surprising traveler is the one who clutches your heart. What could be more incredible than a police officer stopping a speeding veterinarian just to discover, sitting next to him, his own cherished dog stays with us while we unravel an poignant story of surprise loyalty and the unbreakable tie between a man and. On a cool afternoon, a dog takes center stage on a picturesque country road. Officer James Miller had a heart-stopping experience during a routine traffic stop. Miller, who was well known for his rigorous obedience to the law, never thought that his day would be drastically changed by. In a strange turn of events, he saw a car rushing ahead and knew right once that it was being driven by none other than renowned veterinarian Dr. Adam Reynolds, who is known for his medical expertise, and Officer Miller received compassionate care, but nothing could have prepared him for the shock he would experience upon peering through the glass. A big, soulful-eyed creature was peacefully seated in the passenger seat. To the surprise of many, the dog's presence exudes warmth and silent majesty. Both men discovered that the dog was indeed Max, the devoted and kind dog that was Dr. Reynolds' own. In the moment, the community recognized him as the silent guardian in the veterinary clinic and the heart of every rescue. After a speeding infraction, the police and the veterinarian exchanged startled looks, leading to an unexpected reunion. Attempting to comprehend the emotion and irony of the situation for Dr. Reynolds, the unexpected meeting served as a poignant reminder of the close relationship he had with the lore, not simply a passing acquaintance. Normally a silent presence in the backdrop of his hectic day, Max the dog suddenly played the part of the incident's whispers, the story's undisputed star, relating the story of the vet's reckless run and the chance finding of Max in the adjacent. The passenger seat immediately won over spectators' hearts, particularly those who had treasured recollections. Officer James Miller had devoted the majority of his career to patrolling the peaceful countryside with their own devoted friends, roads that swiftly and professionally enforced traffic laws. Afternoon, but an odd sight of a rushing car with a familiar hum disturbed the sound of his patrol car's engine. When he turned on his lights and pulled the car over, the driver, who was obviously in a hurry, couldn't help but observe that the car was owned by Dr. and had the logo of a nearby veterinary clinic. Adam Reynolds was a well-known veterinarian who was generally recognized for his skill and compassion in animal care. James, who was well known in the neighborhood, went up to the car prepared to give a citation for speeding, but upon looking through the glass, he was confronted with. Suddenly, a big dog with soulful eyes was seen sitting in the passenger seat, appearing composed and dignified. Eyes that drew his attention right away, making it obvious that this was no typical dog. There was a sensation, with warmth and devotion that suggested a close, personal bond with the driver. Upon receiving a signal from the officer, Dr. Reynolds, a veterinarian renowned for his compassionate nature, exited the vehicle. His gaze briefly shifted to the puppy next to him after his kind demeanor and smile were slightly frightened by the interruption. Officer Miller and Dr. Reynolds said, "I apologize for the speeding. While returning from an emergency call, I lost track of time, but as he looked at his buddy in the passenger seat, Max is my daily friend. He keeps me company." My voice softened, and I'm even more shocked to find you here. Focused during lengthy clinic shifts, James was unable to conceal his own surprise. He did not often come across circumstances when a routine traffic stop evolved into a moment of. I must admit that I wasn't expecting to see Dr. Reynolds because of our personal connection. Officer Miller said with a sly smirk, "I've heard a lot about your dog riding shotgun, regarding your commitment to animals. Yet Max is so composed here that it nearly seems like he's a co-pilot on your." The sincere and lighthearted exchange swiftly eased the stress that typically goes along with a traffic infraction. Dr. Reynolds clarified that Max was more than just a pet. He was an essential component of his everyday existence and his job at the veterinary clinic. Dr. Reynolds revealed that Max has been with me for years and has seen his presence and every moment of happiness and sadness at the clinic serve as a reminder to me of why I do what I do when I'm anxious or overwhelmed. He's always available to provide consolation without saying a word. And Officer Miller heard his first duty-driven attitude. He inquired about Max's behavior and the dog's origins. gradually allowing his genuine curiosity and empathy to take over. To play such an important role in Dr. Reynolds' life in a laid-back manner, Dr. Reynolds related an incident from his early veterinary school days in which he saved a stray puppy from a bustling highway. That puppy had developed into Max, a living representation of the. He planned to treat every creature that came into contact with him with kind care. But the discourse took an unexpected personal turn when Officer Miller, who took pleasure in his dedication to his work and the community, acknowledged that he, having times when chance meetings changed his outlook on life. I've always supported upholding the law, James, but seeing you and Max today makes me realize that our work isn't only about that. Sometimes it's more important to interact with people and animals in a way that restores our faith than simply obeying commands. His remarks struck a chord with Dr. Reynolds, who nodded gratefully in what we do, recognizing that in every line of work, there are times when routine must yield to compassion, as the two men concluded the. During a traffic stop, Officer Miller noted the incident and gave Dr. Reynolds a warning for speeding. The temperature was far warmer than it would have been in normal conditions when they conducted business cards and decided to keep in contact, since they both felt that this unique experience had created a respect for one another that went beyond. Later that day, news of the traffic stop quietly circulated among their official roles. Dr. Reynolds' neighbors and co-workers in the neighborhood provided feedback on. It was uncommon to witness a professional so unfazed by a routine stop, and many others conjectured that Max's presence was the reason for his composed manner toward the owners of the veterinary clinic. And employees alike commented on Max's reassuring presence, a dog who not only offered company, but also seemed to exemplify the caring nature of the clinic for Officer Miller. The experience left him with a lasting impression, the thought about the surprising connections between duty and compassion, which served as a reminder that even while upholding the law, one may come across instances that highlight the more profound human. In the days that followed, Side of Life frequently cited the instance of Dr. Reynolds and Max as a pivotal. Give an example of how a man's relationship with his dog can help to heal the division between two worlds in the modern era. Officer James Miller and Doc Adam were both involved in the unexpected traffic stop. Reynolds had to deal with new difficulties that went much beyond the basic infraction of speeding. Characterized by the kind presence of Max D., Dr. Reynolds' cherished friend had generated interest and conversation in the neighborhood, but it also started to uncover unexpected issues in both their. Dr. Reynolds' professional lives must be affected by the incident that occurred, being talked about extensively by his co-workers and in the community. And it wasn't just a humiliating traffic stop. Instead, it sparked a discussion on the value of work-life balance and integration inside his veterinary clinic, combining professional obligations with personal passion. And many patients' owners appreciated his commitment, and Max's soothing assurances were acknowledged by a few longtime employees. One senior technician, Mr. Carter, expressed private anxiety about his recent speeding violation. Reynolds has always been our pillar of compassion, but even minor errors can have a major impact if he is careless. Reynolds had to reconsider his daily schedule as a result of these minor tensions, and he quickly found himself torn between spending more time with Max, whom he felt emotionally anchored, and, while Officer Miller was juggling the demands of a busy clinic where every minute mattered, his superiors started taking observation of his unusual candor after the stop. Despite his sympathetic reaction to the situation, prompted other colleagues in his department to commend him, raising concerns about whether his emotional investment could damage. During a regular departmental meeting, a senior officer reprimanded him, saying, "We're here to uphold the law, not to wallow in sentimentality, but it's acceptable to enjoy a good dog story. Despite being given in a stern manner, we must not allow our feelings to get in the way of our responsibility." Miller felt that his experience had broadened his view of community, but the measured tone left him feeling unsettled. But he also experienced pressure to follow the department's more conventional, stoic internal struggle paved the way for a developing debate among his peers over how to strike a balance between rigorous law enforcement and sincere human connection. As the two guys resolved their individual issues, the medical care surrounding the case increased, and the intriguing story created a stir on social media, and in local publications. When a well-known veterinarian was hauled up for speeding, his own dog was discovered to be an unexpected co-pilot, Olivia Reed. After initially covering the incident, the committed investigative writer discovered that her tale had taken on a life of. While many commended the heartwarming demonstration of devotion and the connection between, some people started to wonder if the incident was being overblown or if it was merely a speeding ticket. One internet pundit pointed out dismissively, but crucially, the overwhelming public opinion remained favorable, and many locals shared firsthand accounts of how their pets had supported them during difficult times. And this comment sparked a wider discussion about the transformative. The power of companion animals is a subject that will soon affect veterinary care and law enforcement regulations. Practices nearby, the incident at the veterinary clinic also resulted in. Due to an unexpected organizational change, Dr. Reynolds started hosting casual pet appreciation events where his employees and clients share anecdotes about how Max helped them cope with tough situations. Originally designed as a means of defusing tension following the speeding incident, these sessions quickly turned into a frequent forum where community members and patients talked about the therapeutic benefits of animal interaction. Sessions not only improved spirits, but also assisted Dr. Reynolds in reaffirming his signature as a community officer would be the clinic's dedication to compassionate care. Motivated by his own experience, Miller launched a small project within his. He created a precinct with the goal of promoting goodwill between local pet owners and law enforcement. Community gatherings where police might interact with locals in casual settings while bringing their own pets if accessible and able to participate in cordial, non-aggressive conversations. These, even if they were small-scale, events gradually started to shift the public's opinion of the police, highlighting a greater, compassionate, and neighborhood-focused approach to public safety. But not all new disputes were settled so cooperatively. A portion of the populace and certain police force traditionalists persisted in claiming that the episode was insignificant, raising concerns about whether such emotional outbursts were suitable in a work environment. At local town hall meetings, arguments broke out as several locals voiced their worry that concentrating on personal stories may divert attention from the crucial task of upholding public order. But for many, the emotional interaction between Max and Officer Miller and Dr. Reynolds acted as a strong reminder that even the most ordinary encounters can occasionally be changed by humanity and compassion. As the days stretched into weeks, both Officer Miller and Dr. Reynolds discovered that the consequences of that tragic, their own journeys, and their early responsibilities in the traffic stop, characterized by a combination of public criticism, professional obstacles, and a greater understanding of the bond between humans and animals had started to change local perceptions about law enforcement and veterinary treatment. In this changing environment, the tale of a rushing veterinarian and his devoted dog was quickly coming to represent how unexpected interactions can lead to significant shifts in how communities view one another in the days that follow. During a routine traffic check, rumors of the strange encounter started to circulate across the neighborhood, although most people remember the unexpected picture of Dr. Adam Reynolds with his devoted canine. One particular detail about the companion in the passenger seat persisted in Officer James Miller's thoughts, refusing to remember that while he was going over the incident report in his office, he saw something about the dog collar that was etched on. He hadn't noticed the initials on the metal tag before JM, and it made his heart jump a beat. Could it be memories? Brought to mind a cherished dog that he had lost many years ago, a dog that he had once thought was irreplaceable, whose absence had plagued him throughout the lonely nights while on patrol. And Officer Miller started spilling out. His thoughts strayed back in time as he looked through old case files and sentimental items. When his devoted friend, a lively golden retriever named Max, disappeared over 10 years ago. Unbeknownst to him, the loss had permanently damaged both his career and his emotions. But he had eventually accepted the death as a horrible accident. But there had always been a glimmer of optimism that Max might yet be somewhere now. Miller's pulses met by the uncanny initials on the collar of Dr. Reynolds' vehicle. Raced, unable to control his growing interest as he felt both disbelief and need. Under the pretense of asking standard follow-up questions, Officer Miller made the decision to see Dr. Reynolds at the veterinary clinic. He politely asked about the dog Dr. Reynolds, who had grown up in relation to the traffic stop and the veterinarian's driving history, explaining that he was very fond of his four-legged friend, Max. The dog had wandered inside the clinics. The veterinarian remembered with a kind smile that one wet night in the parking lot, I discovered him shivering and by himself, and he just refused to leave me alone. He then followed me home, and when I discovered he was unidentified, I took him to the doctor. Although Reynolds' tone was kind and thoughtful, there was no reference to a prior owner, which was a detail that resonated with. When Officer Miller remembered the distinctive collar tag, a shiver went down his spine. He asked Dr. Reynolds if, "Do you ever look at Max's collar tag?" Dr. Reynolds hesitated, scowling a little. "I never gave it any attention because I thought it was just a generic tag." "Why?" With a quiet, emotional voice, Miller stretched out and politely asked to see the collar. Dr. Reynolds' bewildered face revealed the dog's collar, which was For an instant, the chamber appeared to have an engraved metal tag that was now clearly marked JM. The initials that had troubled Officer Miller's mind were now unquestionably real and palpable, shrinking around them. Connection to a past he had long lamented. Unable to control his feelings any longer, Miller's eyes began to well up with tears. "That's my dog," he said in a scarcely discernible whisper. "Dr. Reynolds." His expression changed from bewilderment to surprise as he heard Miller reminisce about his deceased friend in that. In a moving moment, the vet vaguely remembered a stray he had discovered on a rainy day years before. At night, wearing a collar with the initials J on it, he thought the dog had been, unaware that fate had handed him a missing piece of someone else's heart. He was abandoned by an unknown someone. Officer Miller was deeply affected by the revelation. It seemed as though the past his long-lost Maxine, whose absence had once caused him sorrow, had come to life before his eyes and was now sitting faithfully. The shock for Dr. Reynolds in the passenger seat of a speeding vehicle was, in addition to the fact that he had unintentionally adopted someone else's beloved friend, he also understood that his own deed of generosity had unintentionally brought a man's lost soul back together. In the days that followed, the news of an unexpected reunion quickly went viral in the town, winning over many hearts on social media. Local news sites ran touching pieces on the incredible turn of events, and the hashtag Sean Max made a comeback, which had brought Officer Miller and his cherished puppy back together. Both men were at the heart of an emotional story that went beyond the ordinary specifics of a speeding ticket officer. Miller and Dr. Reynolds set up a private meeting to talk about how this reunion may happen in a humble and respect. Dr. Reynolds apologized for the mistake and offered assistance. "I had no idea he belonged to you," the veterinarian remarked in a husky voice as Miller retrieved his puppy. "Sincerely, Max has enhanced my life, and if giving him back to you can bring you." Inspired by Reynolds' sincere concern, Miller consented to a peace deal, saying, "I'm more than willing to do whatever it takes." Cautious reunion with cautious optimism on the day of the reunion. Arriving at a peaceful park far from the public eye officer, feelings were running hot. When Miller and Max were reunited, there was a great sense of happiness and tears, of closure. Max, as though realizing the seriousness of the nuzzled moment. His tail wagging softly against Miller was a quiet recognition of a connection that had endured uncertainty and time. The turn in the tale where destiny had weaved through the enigmatic journey of a lost dog, the lives of a committed police officer and a caring veterinarian became a potent illustration of the tenacity of love and devotion. The event, which an emotional reunion that started as a regular traffic check, had restored hope and mended old wounds in Officer James Miller and Dr. Adam Reynolds' lives have already been revealed in the days after the heartbreaking revelation. Entwined by that tragic traffic stop, saw significant transformations as both men accepted the unanticipated reunion, its emotional burden, and the realization that Maxie, the puppy in the passenger seat, may be the long-term. Officer Miller's lost friend threw shockwaves through both of their personal lives, forcing them to be front-buried. Officer Miller's recollections and reassessment of their work priorities were profoundly. His calm demeanor in his small office at the station he pored over was shaken by a personal blow. Old pictures and mementos of his golden retriever, who was formerly his favorite dog. For years, His absence had plagued him, and every remembrance brought a bittersweet mixture of loss and longing that I always believed I, having accepted Max Miller's death, confided in a reliable co-worker in a late-night debrief, his voice quiet and full of feeling, but it feels like the past is coming back to haunt me when I see those initials on the collar. Miller, who had up until this point maintained a completely professional demeanor, experienced a pivotal moment of vulnerability in private. Outside, the reunion with his lost friend made him acknowledge that his passion for his career was not a flaw, but rather evidence of his dedication to the people and animals he cared for. But Dr. Reynolds was entangled in a complicated web of, even though he had taken Max in with the greatest of intentions, he felt guilty and responsible. In the silence, his unintentional contribution to the dog's reunion with its proper owner left him feeling guilty. Reynolds struggled with a sense of regret in the solitude of his veterinary clinic. "I saved this puppy because during a contemplative time in his office, he whispered that he thought every animal should be given another chance, but I never thought that by doing this, I would be unintentionally preserving someone else's treasured memory." Dr. Reynolds quickly started getting encouraging letters from patients and coworkers who commended his caring personality. But he set up a secret meeting with Officer Miller since he felt responsible for returning Max to him. Their conversation was emotional as they were resolved to do what was right for the dog and the guy who had lost him. As he described his friend's suffering, Miller's eyes were filled with sorrow, and Reynolds conveyed sincere. Max Reynolds' voice trembled with emotion as he continued, "I apologize for the oversight. I never meant to keep you apart. I sincerely apologize for whatever role I may have played in that loss." The respectful and understanding dialogue was helpful. Beyond their own modifications, both men start the mending process, and the unexpected turn cascaded out into both in the precinct's professional community and within their particular fields. Miller's bravery in displaying vulnerability in a setting that frequently valued emotional intelligence was praised by younger officers. In formal briefings, a number of officers observed that Miller's readiness to share his tale had created a fresh. Seeing him share his thoughts about Max in the departmental dialogue has helped me realize that our job isn't just about, one young cop said, "Enforcing the law is about protecting our community in every sense." His tone was thoughtful. This small change in the mindset of the department started to close the gap between traditional law enforcement and a more sympathetic, community-focused method of public service at DR. The tale of the rushing veterinarian and his unanticipated guest at Reynolds' clinic quickly became the subject of dialogue between employees and customers. While many praised the reunion as a heartwarming example of the indestructible link between a man and his dog, several others were worried about the potential effects of such private issues. In response, Professional Reputation arranged an internal conversation with his team to investigate methods of combining professional obligations with personal passions. He clarified during a staff meeting that our interactions with animals define us as caregivers, and while it's vital, he said that in order to remain professional, we must never forget the compassion that led us into this line of work. Struck a chord, encouraging his group to adopt a more well-rounded strategy that honored empathy without sacrificing. Community response activities also highlighted the significant influence of the Twist neighbors and local authorities on the quality of care. After learning of the reunion, fans took to social media to express their own personal struggles and pet loss tales. Buzzed with sentimental postings with hashtags like Lost and Found Love and K-Max Returns, resulting in an abundance of support for the local television stories about Miller and Reynolds brought attention to the officers' emotional journey and the vet portraying their reunion as a sign of hope and salvation in a society that occasionally seems uncaring about individual issues. Loss in private. Both men started to welcome fate's surprising turn as a chance for progress. Officer Miller too. With Max at his side once more, he began to establish a closer connection with his community and started taking part in community service initiatives that tell his experience and inspire others to be more forthcoming. Regarding their loss and recovery experiences, Dr. Reynolds, and for his part, persisted in promoting compassionate care, citing the event as a reminder that occasionally the most Unplanned meetings during the course of the day lead to significant life experiences. Over the course of several weeks, Max's bittersweet reunion with his birth owner served as a catalyst for both emotional and professional development. The experience changed both Officer Miller and Dr. Reynolds, each realizing that the bravery to face one's faults rather than the lack of them was the actual test of success. Been shattered. Their narrative, which was openly honored at community gatherings and quietly among friends, stood as a potent reminder that the ties of love and commitment may mend even under the most unexpected circumstances. The first shock of the unexpected reunion is that it causes wounds and creates new beginnings. Started to settle, new levels of intricacy surfaced, incorporating more subplots into the story and putting everyone's willpower to the test upon learning that Officer James Miller's long-lost dog Max was under the care of Dr. Adam Reynolds, who presented unexpected difficulties that went much beyond the straightforward. The once amusing interaction at the traffic stop swiftly turned into a complex drama with personal, community, and professional dimensions coming together around the main character, Max. Internal dynamics within the police department were the focus of one developing subplot, as demonstrated by Officer Miller's. Some had praised him for his passionate response, but it also caused his colleagues to argue about professionalism. Senior officers are cautious about creating a precedent that could enhance emotional involvement in daily tasks, raising concerns about whether such actions could erode objectivity on. Some veterans contended in a series of private meetings that one's emotions should never get in the way of duty, as an increasing number of younger officers, motivated by Miller's candor, started pushing for a more. This internal dispute not only questioned departmental norms, but also the human-centered approach to law enforcement. Additionally, spurred a more extensive conversation about how police work may integrate community involvement and emotional. Dr. Reynolds' intellect without compromising effectiveness found himself struggling with the fallout from his unintentional part in bringing Max back to his previous owner. A few senior staff members voiced concerns, despite the fact that many at his veterinary clinic praised his act of compassion. Concerned about possible liabilities and the effect on the clinic's reputation, co-workers started spreading allegations that some clients even questioned whether his speeding violation would draw unwelcome legal attention. Dr. Reynolds' attention to his own pet care was taking away from his medical duties. The idealist made an effort to strike a balance between his commitment to patients and his personal life, but because of the media, he was in the spotlight, and every choice he made was scrutinized by the public and private. Reynolds acknowledged in conversations with reliable friends that I saved Max because I think in the capacity of unconditional love to heal, but I never imagined that this choice would lead to a completely new set of many difficulties for the community as well as for me, and this internal conflict added an additional aspect of the story that forced Chung to reinterpret what it meant to be a veterinarian and a kind person in the meantime, Max, the main character, whose presence had already changed. Subtle tendencies started to emerge in the officers' and veterinarians' lives that alluded to his enigmatic former neighbors, and frequent clinic patrons began observing that Max would halt as though he were hearing far-off noises, like a bark or a well-known whistle, and then gaze wistfully in a particular direction, as if bringing back a long-forgotten memory. These actions sparked some animal behaviors speculate that Max might be communicating more than just friendship, even implied that he might be suffering from PTSD as a result of the experience he had experienced. Although delicate, this subplot highlighted the fact that he was removed from his original owner. The notion that a dog's relationship with its owner may last beyond time and distance, bringing depth and mystery to these new narratives, were further amplified by the Olivia Reed tale on social media. The community's interest in Max's narrative was noticed by the inquisitive investigative journalist via her blog. Posts and video clips started to capture the unexpected traffic stop, as well as the changing public sentiment. Locally, emotion hashtags like Max Returns and L Reunited trended as people started sharing their personal pet lost and found stories online, which sparked events organized by the community, featuring spontaneous pet gatherings and fundraising events that honor the relationship between people and animals. Nevertheless, Several people also criticized the increased media attention, claiming that the prioritizing a sentimental narrative was trivializing more important issues. These opposing viewpoints produced a digital. The community is being challenged by Battleground to strike a balance between joyful celebration and critical examination of larger socioeconomic. Additionally, a surprising subplot surfaced from the community outreach initiatives that officers, motivated by his own experience, Miller had started organizing minor neighborhood gatherings where police officers interact with locals in casual situations, frequently bringing their own pets at these events, which are intended to foster trust, but quickly encountered. Due to interpersonal and administrative difficulties, some departmental traditionalists opposed the move toward a greater emphasis on community-oriented education, citing worries about upholding order and discipline simultaneously, while some local. The blurring of the boundaries between personal ties and law enforcement caused unease among the residents. These conflicts led to a number of roundtable talks that made both parties face their assumptions concerning vulnerability and authority in the context of these intersecting subplots, the personal toll on. It grew more and more clear that both Officer Miller and Dr. Reynolds, feeling both invigorated by the meeting and disturbed by the memories of his lost friend, he sought to balance his responsibilities at work and his renewed sense of personal loss in the interim. Reynolds struggled with remorse by unintentionally postponing the return of a much-missed puppy while he realized that, in the end, his acts had restored hope to Miller's life and their entwined paths, highlighted the tragic reality that professional responsibility and personal recovery might occasionally be interconnected, and that the road to peace is frequently lined with unforeseen difficulties as the days stretched into weeks. All of these extra subplots and difficulties came together to produce a larger story that was as much about community transformation and environmental symbolism, because it told the tale of a person's personal redemption. A caring police officer and a rushing veterinarian had become the threads of a complicated tapestry of love loss and Max the dog's unwavering strength in overcoming these fresh obstacles. Each character was compelled to reconsider long-held beliefs, reassess priorities, and finally accept the notion that unexpected reunions can lead to significant transformation in the days that observed both the emotional reunion over Max and the shocking traffic stop. Dr. Adam Reynolds and Officer James Miller had to navigate a maze of conflicting feelings and interpersonal difficulties that went well beyond their first meeting. What started as a single, unexpected encounter and quickly developed into a string of exchanges, each laden with deep disagreements and minute changes in viewpoint that demonstrate how intensely personal experiences may transform. Miller was a professional identification officer whose world had long been regulated by legal procedures and norms. Enforcement's feelings now conflicted with the department's customarily austere ethos. Miller's coworkers noticed a softer side of him showing during regular precinct briefings. During a private discussion in the poorly lighted break area, a young cop noted Miller's candor regarding his history with, "I've learned from Max that our profession involves more than just making arrests and issuing citations. It's about establishing a human connection with the community, but not everyone welcomed this development." Experienced officers were worried that a senior officer's professionalism would be compromised by such vulnerability. "I'm concerned that too much sentimentality could skew our judgment, because we have a responsibility to be objective and firm." This internal conflict at work left Miller divided between following departmental customs and embracing. Dr. Reynolds was not exempt from the transforming force of reunion and personal loss at the veterinary clinic. Similar disputes, but he took pride in his caring approach, which was demonstrated by his choice to always. With Max by his side, the incident's attention started to cause strain. One afternoon during a staff meeting, a longtime nurse softly spoke among his workers, voiced her worries, and "I respect Dr. Reynolds' dedication to our patients," concerned that combining our personal and professional lives could cause diversions or even liability problems. Dr. Reynolds, his brow furrowed as he listened carefully and thought about the libations later, that Max has always been a source of inspiration. He thought one day in a quiet area of his workplace of strength for me, but I have to make sure that this relationship doesn't jeopardize the faith that my patient has in me. Struggling to strike a balance between work obligations and personal devotion became a common subject. Throughout his everyday encounters, he tried to reassure his colleagues that competency and compassion could coexist. In an accidental encounter, Miller and Reynolds' representations of the two worlds engaged in dilemmas. Meeting a neighborhood pet adoption function, both men ended up sitting at the same table. Over casual discussion at the table, they learned that in addition to their love of animals, they also had a deep-seated conviction that human connection is vital. Miller recalled that seeing Max again made me feel something that Reynolds agreed, saying, I often wonder if our pets are the silent healers who I thought I had lost a long time ago. Remind us to be concerned about what really matters. Their conversation was friendly and cordial, yet it was tinged with an unspoken recognition of the psychological hazards they had both assumed by exposing their personal lives to the world. Meanwhile, community responses made these social connections much more difficult. Various viewpoints were shared on social media, and many people praised the heartwarming reunion as evidence that human ties may surpass professional limits, while others remained dubious and local online. Hot discussions broke up on forums, and one comment said, "It's heartwarming, but while one person stated that this narrative demonstrates that we were romanticizing a traffic stop, sincere devotion and concern can transform lives even in unexpected ways, like mixed reactions forced Miller and Reynolds to struggle with the issue of staying true to themselves while emotions ran high as Dr. Reynolds dealt with a public that was eager to pass judgment, even among the relatives of those involved. A spouse who had discreetly supported his dual life as a caring pet owner and a committed veterinarian said, "Worries during a late-night discussion. I occasionally worry that Max's focus could overwhelm the." She quietly acknowledged the genuine job you do, but I can see how much he means to you and to our customers, and I am confident that your heart is in the right place. Her remarks gave Reynolds consolation and a reminder of the fine line he had to walk between his professional obligations and personal fulfillment. In parallel, Miller's spouse, who had always been there for his family, had an unanticipated change in dynamics, appreciated his unwavering character, and started to notice a softer side of him that brought back memories of the anguish of losing a beloved friend and the consequent bravery to serve old wounds again during supper. Miller's spouse once remarked, "I'm happy of you because I watch you change, but additionally, consider how these feelings may affect you." Miller paused before responding, saying, "I've discovered that vulnerability is not a weakness. Rather, it is a strength that serves me. Establish a closer connection with our community." This private conversation highlighted the personal development that both people were going through as they gradually reinterpreted what it meant to be a caretaker and a protector during all. Through these intricate exchanges, a recurrent theme surfaced: the understanding that both professional duty and personal healing were not exclusive. Both Dr. Reynolds and Officer Miller were learning to negotiate a world where it was difficult to distinguish between personal and professional life, a world where sincere human interactions have the potential to revolutionize their journeys. Full of reflections on doubt and eventual acceptance, it served as a potent reminder that genuine embracing one's vulnerabilities is frequently a sign of strength. In the end, the unexpected reunion with Max had not only brought a guy and his missing friend back together, but it had also sparked a larger discussion about compassion, duty, and the lasting strength of interpersonal ties as time went on in the community and those. It started to realize that the healing power of the heart might change people's lives and even institutions if only they were brave enough to tell the tale of the unplanned traffic stop and their heartfelt reunion with Max. Kept circulating, eerie but subtle clues started to appear that indicated there was more to the surface as opposed to a straightforward instance of speeding, and these new components progressively increased the level of tension and sparked inquiries about unsaid underlying motivations, partnerships, and the potential for this incident to be a component of a bigger story that began when, a few days following the reconnection, Officer James, at the precinct, Miller was given an envelope containing several faded pictures and a mysterious message that reads, "Not everything is as it seems. Look deeper one." One of the pictures displayed a blurry but recognizable image of Max in a scene that Miller didn't recognize as a suburban. The note alluded to Max's past secrets rather than Dr. Reynolds' clinic, implying that his trip might have been more difficult than anyone had thought. Miller's thoughts were racing if Max had. Was there any aspect of Dr. Adams' life that was concealed as he lived in multiple homes? Late at night, Reynolds started getting enigmatic text messages on his clinic phone. These texts were delivered by him. Snippets of information from an unidentified number suggested that someone was keeping tabs on his whereabouts. In one message, "Read about the memories that your friend possesses, in addition to affection. You that the truth regarding Max might turn out to be more complicated than you initially thought." Viewed as a marketing ploy, or perhaps an effort at mischief because of the text's unsettling tone and persistence. Reynolds making him question whether there were hidden agendas driving the increased media coverage of Max Local. Social media groups and internet forums that had gained popularity following the traffic stop started to seem increasingly conspiratorial. Some people conjectured that the reunion was possibly a purposeful twist planned by an agent rather than a chance event. Unknown party to highlight more serious concerns, perhaps even to gauge public opinion over the combination of tagged like WMAX mystery and personalized with professional roles. As individuals shared thoughts about Max's strange adoptions and secret pasts, hidden tales of Max started to trend locally, as well as business interests that could profit from a touching story. While a well-known local blogger who centered on law enforcement and community affairs wrote a piece raising concerns about whether the tearful reunion could be a concerted attempt to enhance the police department's reputation. The blogger proposed that recent changes in the goal of community policing tactics was to make cops more relatable by emphasizing their more sympathetic viewpoints. This tale might be more than a coincidence. Article wondered if Max's story is being used by someone else to bring. The story fueled an already heated public debate about the divide between police enforcement and the community, leaving people to question whether the apparently innocent interaction had a secret purpose, heightening the intrigue during. A receptionist informed Dr. Reynolds during a normal follow-up call about a scheduled visit that the patient had asked about a dog that had been missing for years and had stunning resemblances to Max, but when reviewing his files, Reynolds found no past instances of this type of situation, which led him to believe that Max's story might have been entangled with unresolved historical events. This surprising lead, which had been carefully buried, suggested that Max might not have been so stray after all, but rather, new issues are raised by a lost pet with a history of separation and perhaps even an earlier existence with a different owner. Recalling how he initially became friends with Reynolds, Officer Miller is currently plagued by the enigmatic envelope and the poignant message chose to discreetly seek advice from a departmental colleague who was dependable and had a background in investigations. They started comparing the pictures and the hints with local missing pet records. The initial findings were not definitive, but a slight. As a pattern started to take shape, reports from all around the world occasionally mentioned a dog that fit Max's description. This indication suggested for a number of years that Max might have been lost and found more than once. History masked by bureaucratic neglect and time as these small but important clues persisted in. Consequently, the community's climate got more tense, and citizens' participation in public gatherings increased, requesting a probe into Max's enigmatic past in addition to reports on the police's progress. At one of these gatherings at a nearby community center, a lifelong local said, "I remember a dog just like him. From my early years, lost, roaming, and filled with memories," which makes me question if the increasing ambiguity and the cascade of fresh, connected clues are ways that fate brings our past back to us. Raise the story's stakes. What had started out as an odd traffic stop and a heartwarming reunion was now developing into a complex enigma and puzzle involving unresolved past, emotional grief, and even coordinated attempts to sway public opinion. The combination of these factors created the conditions for an stunning revelation that was expected to challenge all of the community's preconceived notions about Max and the lives entwined with his narrative with every whispered theory, cryptic snapshot, and anonymous message. Officer Miller and Dr. Reynolds both sensed the tension rising online, burden of an enigma that was becoming more significant than either of them alone, the query that hovered over each. It was evident from the chat who was actually responsible for Max's past mystery and what. If they investigated further in the weeks after the unexpected traffic stop and the touching reunion, the tale of Max, Dr. Adam Reynolds, and Officer James Miller started to become woven into the local community, strengthening bonds and inspiring fresh subplots that enhanced. The story goes well beyond the initial encounter as new information becomes available, and both men deal with the fallout from there. The police department officers' personal and professional lives started to unexpectedly cross. Miller's overt emotional outburst during the traffic stop progressively changed the dynamics among the younger police. They began sharing their own stories after being moved by his openness and desire to establish a personal connection regarding family struggles and lost pets during casual briefings and after shift. At meetings, they talked about how individual experiences may make law enforcement more relatable and foster trust with. One junior officer's confession during a quiet moment in the community after hearing Miller talk about his departed comrade opened my eyes. I came to understand that our role at the precinct is about understanding, not just following the regulations. The people we serve, and this developing friendship led to minor adjustments in the department where conversations about traditional police training started to give way to empathy, although these changes weren't always. Despite this, several veteran police continued to exercise caution, cautioning that excessive emotion could impair judgment. Discussions revealed a conflict between ingrained customs and a newer, more humane method that laid the groundwork for community policing's continued development at the same time. The effects of the interaction with Officer Miller and Max started to sink in at Dr. Reynolds' veterinary clinic. The tale is currently making the rounds on local social media, and positive comments regarding the clinic's compassionate atmosphere were abundant as a result of community conversations. Customers commented on how Max, a devoted and kind dog, seemed to represent. Dr. Reynolds promoted the practice's spirit during weekly staff meetings. His crew to exchange intimate stories about their own dogs, creating a space where compassion and our patients trust us with their hearts as well as their health, and professionalism coexisted, he informed his colleagues. This effort not only strengthened staff, but also allowed us to show off a little bit of our personal lives. Morale, but also improved relationships with clients, because many pet owners were reassured by the clinics. Valued sincere relationships outside of the police and clinic's immediate circles. The community started to plan celebrations of these intimate ties that were motivated by the heartwarming. Pet and community gatherings were started by the townspeople as a reunion. Police officers, veterinarians, and local families attended these activities in the park, with their pets to engage in casual activities and exchange stories. These gatherings, which were frequently marked by genuine conversations, laughing, and group support, served to further bridge the divide between the public and the authority. At one gathering, Officer Miller offered to talk about his experiences, and his openness about losing his own dog struck a strong chord with others, igniting conversations. Discusses the significance of compassion in daily life and the healing of grief in the interim. Local investigative journalist Olivia Reed kept up with the story's ripple effects. Later blog entries broadened the narrative by emphasizing the wider consequences of interpersonal relationships in one story. She spoke with a number of locals who recalled how lost and recovered stories. Pets had always quietly influenced how they remembered the town Max. According to a lifelong local, the subject of taxes is more than simply a traffic stop. It serves as a reminder that our lives are, with surprising acts of generosity threaded throughout, Reed's art not only amplified the improvements made to the clinic and police department, while also linking them to a broader movement, promoting more compassionate public institutions. Another subplot started to transpire when a nearby pet adoption organization observed a surge in requests and adoptions motivated by the touching tale of Max's reunion with his biological father. Seizing the chance, the agency's owner started a campaign under the Encourage the people in your neighborhood to adopt abandoned animals by finding your forever friend. The campaign garnered a lot of support and contributed to raising awareness of the predicament of many homeless animals, further solidifying. Because these subplots intertwine both Officer Miller and the story of compassion as a potent force in the community. And Dr. Reynolds had to deal with the demands of both personal expectations and public attention. While still callous, Miller's supervisor started to recognize the new direction his colleagues were pushing for: a combination of reputation, rigorous law enforcement, and sincere involvement with the community, while Reynolds struck a compromise between the clinic's prosperity and his moral obligation to protect his personal life, particularly now that his personal experience has been included in a larger public discussion in this changing landscape. Max, the Nexus, remained a silent, unwavering presence of these relationships, whether it was through casual discussions and the brief heart-to-heart talks in the clinic or neighborhood gatherings in the nearby park. Max's tale became emblematic of the compassion's transformational potential in every encounter, shared memory, and a rising narrative that emphasized the value of accepting vulnerability was aided by public forums and creating real human relationships. So when the days stretched into weeks, the single incident involving a speeding veterinarian and a distraught police officer developed into a complex saga was a tale that showed how the emotional and professional might occasionally come together. Even the tiniest deeds of compassion can lead to a movement that redefines community, transforms organizations, and, in the end, mends old wounds. As the story of the unexpected traffic stop and emotional reunion with Max kept the simmering tension in the neighborhood alive. As foreign forces and internal conflicts started to coalesce, a dramatic turning point was set in motion. Had begun as an unexpected, even touching encounter was now turning into a battlefield where institutional expectations, public opinion, and individual vulnerabilities clashed. There was a widening gap in Officer James Miller's department at the police precinct. While younger, Miller's readiness to display emotion and establish a connection with the police and some progressive superiors was admired. On a personal level, some veteran officers in the community remained steadfastly. In a heated departmental meeting, a senior officer made the conventional argument that we must keep our job professional while letting our emotions affect it may weaken the discipline we rely on in dire circumstances. His remarks, made with the weight of years in uniform, resonated with some, generating a mutter of disapproval among the Miller, who had previously spoken out about his personal tragedy, now had to defend his strategy in our community. Is composed of people who deserve to be seen, he stated passionately, not just anonymous residents. Heard, even if it entails displaying some weakness in this passionate defense that revealed a division that was starting to form within the department, with each side becoming more and more entrenched in its opinions of how to appropriately strike a balance between compassion and enforcement. The veterinary clinic where Dr. Although many employees supported Reynolds' work, Adam Reynolds' workplace was going through its own internal turmoil. Some senior colleagues expressed concern about the empathetic style, questioning whether combining personal feelings with professional practice might damage the clinic's name. A seasoned technician said at a heated staff meeting, "If our personal lives begin to interfere with our ability to offer impartial, high-quality care, our customers will lose faith in us. Where do we draw the line?" The argument swiftly became heated, exposing long-standing fears regarding one's professional identity and the worry that the clinic's medical standards may be unintentionally compromised by the emotional emphasis on Max. Reynolds was torn between justifying his own decisions and attempting to persuade his group that empathy and competence might coexist. "So, I save Max because I think that." Reynolds asserted that the therapeutic value of empathy is because our own experiences influence us, and if we lose it, we lose the core of our motivation. In the meantime, the community was responding with a variety of disputes led by investigative local media. Many hailed the heartwarming reunion as proof that writer Olivia Reed had made the story a sensation. Critics of the transformative power of interpersonal relationships surfaced, dismissing the event as a PR hoax. Heated discussions using hashtags like Max on social media platforms, serving as a diversion for more urgent local issues. Debates about whether law enforcement and professional integrity could actually improve returns, duty, and compassion. Attend a town hall meeting hosted by the community to embrace vulnerability without sacrificing their obligations. The voices of activist M. Charlotte Green clashed as locals voiced conflicting opinions. Some contended that the tale humanized public institutions and served as a beacon of hope, while others warned that such emotional outbursts could make it difficult to distinguish between personal emotions and professionalism, which could lead to unexpected outcomes in the midst of these outside forces. Both Officer Miller and Dr. Reynolds had to face the consequences of their acts on a personal level. Miller was troubled by the recollection of Max, his long-lost dog, struggled with the return of unpleasant feelings he had long attempted to. Buried late one evening at the precinct looking over old photos of his old friend, he confided in a value partner, "It's bittersweet to see Max again, but I'm not sure I'm ready to have these old wounds resurrected." His confession highlighted the personal reminder of what we've lost and what we can restore if we open our hearts. The stakes were high, and his vulnerability became a focal point for both. Physician Reynolds, too, faced the burden of peer respect and concern. Burden of balancing the emotional resonance of the incident with his professional persona in a private time following when the clinic closed for the day. He sat in his office with patient records and Max's photos all around him, reminding me every day that our work involves more than simply medicine. It involves changing someone's life, sometimes in unanticipated ways. But he was also concerned about the long-term consequences of combining professional obligation with personal attachment, particularly as his story started to control local news stories and influence public opinion as these internal and when foreign disputes reached a turning point. A pivotal moment occurred during a public forum hosted at the community center in a crowded auditorium with local law enforcement officers, medical professors, and professionals. Intense arguments ultimately descended into a conflict that required a senior police officer to mediate. Officers said, "We owe it to our community, but we must never allow sentimentality to override our duty. Must understand that compassion is what unites us and is not a sign of weakness." Words sparked an intense debate regarding the necessity of maintaining balance in the forum, with opinions from both sides contributing. Culminated when Ms. Green put up a daring plan for the formation, creating a joint task force to close the gap between local residents, the medical community, and law enforcement. "Let's establish an environment where our common experiences, both the victories and the setbacks, can lead us to a more." She stated that the idea received a combination of passionate support and criticism for its unified approach to public service. Skepticism, but it signaled a shift in perspective and an explicit recognition that the problems brought up by the Max event were too important to be written off as one-off incidents. When the forum came to a close, and the air was thick with expectation as attendees flowed out into the chilly night air, the combined power of private revelations, public indignation, and internal arguments had prepared the ground for both Dr. Reynolds and Officer Miller to take decisive action. Together with their communities, they now face the difficulty of incorporating these teachings into a fresh framework of recognizing the need for a framework that would respect the past while paving the way for a compassionate future. Duty walked hand in hand with him in the weeks after the remarkable traffic stop. Officer James Miller's story revealed that the incident's ripple effects had become a local phenomenon. Dr. Adam Reynolds' surprise visit and his emotional reunion with his long-lost dog role in the incident garnering a lot of media attention. Tension started to rise between there. It was now time for pivotal moments of confrontation within their various institutions and across the community. Conflicts between personal realities and professional expectations paved the door for difficult decisions and daring new paths at. A specially called meeting of the police precinct was held to discuss the escalating controversy regarding the extent of personal law enforcement in a packed briefing room should take sentiment into account. According to Officer Miller's supervisor, Captain Roberts voiced worry, saying strongly that our department is founded on discipline and defined boundaries, while I Despite the strong response from the community to this case, we must make sure that our actions are fair and his remarks struck a chord with some of the senior officers who were concerned that our judgment is not clouded by our personal feelings. Although overt emotional outbursts could compromise the department's authority, a number of junior officials, motivated by Miller's candor, fervently lobbied for a novel strategy. One officer stated, "Since the neighborhood is changing, so should we demonstrate." The conversation expanded because empathy and interacting with the public humanize us and foster trust rather than diminishing us, that heated. And at a crucial time, voices rose on both sides. Officer Miller, he got to his feet, speaking in a firm but impassioned tone. "I am aware that the conventional method has its advantages, but Max's story has taught me that empathy can be a strong instrument for closing the divide between the community and law enforcement. But we need to strike a balance, where we uphold the law while also acknowledging the human tales that lie behind each call." His moving statement was interspersed with, though the discussion was far from resolved, many in the audience were swayed by his long-lost companion's memories, was contacted to initiate community engagement programs that enabled cops to engage in more intimate interactions with locals, such holding pet-friendly activities and taking part in neighborhood get-togethers at. In parallel, a confrontation was taking place at the veterinary clinic of Dr. Adam Reynolds. While many customers and employees rejoiced over the heartwarming event, it also drew criticism. Reunion. Some senior co-workers were concerned that the public's attention on their personal lives could jeopardize the. In a tense staff meeting, the clinic's reputation for therapeutic excellence. A longtime nurse said that if our personal lives become too complicated, our patients will not be able to rely on us for objective, high-quality care. Entangled with our work, it could convey the incorrect message. Dr. Reynolds. Max listened carefully before answering quietly. "Max is more than just my pet. He serves as a real-life illustration of the kindness we try to show each day, and serves as a reminder that medicine is not merely concerning therapeutic processes. It's about providing life care in all its forms." And the conversation was intense. And after a few tearful moments, the crew decided to honor the clinic's human by planning a monthly pet appreciation event. Clients, employees, and stories of their own cherished pets could be shared by community members, reaffirming the clinic's dedication to. The pivotal moment for both communities occurred when compassionate care was provided without compromising its professional integrity. The forum brought people together when the local media started planning town hall meetings at the community center. Local business owners, medical professionals, and police representatives. As citizens wanted clarification on how institutions could strike a balance between duty and compassion, the mood was tense. In a time when professional positions and personal stories were becoming more and more entwined, Miss Charlotte Green, a well-known community leader, moderated the conversation, and our community saw something genuinely amazing intersection of law, medicine, and real human connection. She stated that we need to choose today how to respect that relationship without sacrificing the integrity of our institutions. May be both compassionate and disciplined, and we want to know how we're doing. Moving forward in a manner that best benefits our community, the forum soon turned into a battlefield of opinions among some locals. Claimed that a strength that promoted trust in public service was personal vulnerability, but others warned against obfuscating the distinction between private, polite, and heated feelings and professional and obligations. As conversations progressed, a local business owner said, "I want our cops and, in my opinion, medical services should be efficient, but they should also have empathy. We don't have to sacrifice one for the other." The argument was heated, but gradually agreement emerged. The community's strong need for transparency emerged. By the forum's conclusion, a number of important decisions were made on accountability and a renewed emphasis on the human element of service. Decided to sponsor community engagement pilot initiatives involving law enforcement while local businesses. Both leaders and locals committed to supporting programs, such as the clinic's Pet Appreciation Day, to creating advisory groups that would keep an eye on how professional obligations and interpersonal relationships are balanced, making sure that the community's beliefs will be reflected in future regulations. As the conference came to an end and the attendees scattered into. Despite knowing the difficulties that lay ahead, The chilly night air, Officer Miller and Dr. Reynolds felt a renewed feeling of purpose. They realized that the sudden reunion with Max had evolved into more than just a fortuitous meeting. Rather, it served as a trigger for shift. Their separate trajectories became entwined with a larger community movement that honored the. With these choices, the transformational power of empathy and a personal connection propels them both into a new future. The veterinary clinic and the police department entered a phase of cautious optimism after realizing that the journey was just getting started, and maintaining the delicate balance between duty and compassion would take ongoing. The seed had been sown, and it was now growing thanks to communication, adaptation, and support from one another. Encourage them to cultivate it into a long-lasting transformation as the sun set and as a breeze blew across the peaceful country road. The stress that had been building for weeks became evident. Discover the touching tale of Officer James Miller's reunion with his long-lost dog. The unanticipated involvement of Max and Dr. Adam Reynolds in the incident has evolved from a single traffic stop into a complex discussion about professionalism, empathy, and the role regarding personal vulnerability in the public sector, now that internal public forums. Every participant thought that departmental meetings and community debates were becoming more intense. A final internal meeting had been held as the precinct approached a significant turning point. Being summoned in the early evening, the room was occupied by a rising contingent of senior officers who were apprehensive. Captain Roberts, one of his younger, more sympathetic co-workers, had long been an champion for rigorous discipline who is suddenly uncomfortable about something we have always taken pleasure in. His voice echoed in the nearly empty briefing room as he started. We pride ourselves on our objectivity, but recent events have demonstrated that our society is demanding a new type of service that embraces our humanity without violating our obligation. His hesitating remarks indicated a change in Miller, the mindset officer for the department, was seated at the front and felt the pressure of these expectations after his recent internal reports and even off-the-record chats revealed a vulnerability that was now under careful examination. He was aware that the following actions would define not only his career, but also the department's changing strategy for community involvement. Whereas the air at Dr. Reynolds' veterinary clinic was equally charged in a crowded after-hours staff meeting, Dr. Reynolds gave a suggestion to incorporate frequent pet appreciation events as a way to confirm and personalize the clinic's image. Its dedication to compassionate care. The proposal was received with conflicting. Though many clients and junior employees supported the notion, several senior administrators and technicians cautioned that these private displays could make it difficult to distinguish between professional service and our personal lives could affect the clinic standing. Thus, we must keep a balance among senior staff. The argument heated up as a member persisted or risked undermining our credibility. As each side debated the appropriate role of emotion in their professional lives, voices rose in passionate dispute. Practice outside of their individual schools, the community's excitement was intensifying to a. The local community center hosted a well-attended town hall meeting where local law enforcement, medical experts, and representatives were supposed to talk about how to best incorporate the principles of discipline and compassion. The hall was crowded, and there was a lot of nervous energy in the air. Every moment was filmed by local media cameras, and hashtags like duty, compassion, and Max returns were all over social media as the conference started. Mrs. reflected a society that was deeply divided but united by the yearning for a brighter future. We Stand at a Crossroads Tonight was moderated by Charlotte Green, who said in a firm voice, despite the obvious tension in the room, our police force, medical services, and institutions are being called upon to change. We need to figure out how to fulfill our obligations while valuing the interpersonal relationships that describe us. We need clarification and, more crucially, a change in our language. Resonated, but there were a lot of unanswered questions and concerns that expressing emotion would compromise. Strict discipline and true compassion could coexist in the workplace. During the heated town hall discussions, a seasoned police officer who was representing the conventional side argued vehemently that it is our duty to uphold the law. Although empathy is admirable, Our ability to uphold the law must never be compromised. Objectively, as opposed to a younger officer repeating Miller's previous. Since trust is the foundation of our community, if we disregard our own, humanity runs the risk of offending the people we are supposed to help. The clash of viewpoints reached a climax when voices rose and, with every minute that went by, the argument became louder, and at the same time, an unforeseen occurrence added another. Olivia Reed, an investigative journalist who had followed the entire saga from the beginning, added a sense of urgency. Revealed as she entered the stage via live feed, her face composed but focused, that she had access to confidential internal communications from the police department and the clinic of Dr. Reynolds, demonstrating that earlier, unreported conversations about embracing a more community-oriented. Examine these records, she said, indicating that the seeds of transformation were planted several years prior to this tragedy, but they have only recently come to fruition. Will our institutions embrace this change, or will they continue to adhere to antiquated notions of authority? The hall was rocked by her revelation, which increased the sense of urgency that nothing less than a thorough. It would be sufficient to reconsider public service as the meeting came to an end in the community's collective. When optimism and frustration peaked, everyone realized that the next several days would be crucial. Dramatic policy changes were the result of internal discussions at the veterinary clinic and the police department. Reforms, the society called for responsibility and a harmony between compassion and discipline, a harmony that, if accomplished, the atmosphere might change not just these institutions, but also the fabric of local public life. Dr. Reynolds and accused Officer Miller both serve as representations of the changing. Everyone was ready to move forward, knowing that the following stage would require them to face their innermost uncertainties and reinterpret their responsibilities within the community. The tension was nearly palpable, a pledge that the impending conflict would be pivotal, and the combination of duty and compassion may ultimately become the new. So, the scene was set for a moment as the clear night grew deeper and the community's demands reached a fever pitch that would permanently alter the local public service scene at a news conference that was specifically organized in. Everyone's attention was on the speakers in the crowded town hall auditorium, each of whom was ready to unveil after months of internal discussions, external pressure, and personal revelations, this was the point at which finally, the delicate balance between duty and compassion will be put to the test. Officer James Miller repositioned himself and took the lead, standing resolutely. "But I've served this community for years," he said, his eyes sparkling with enthusiasm, his voice steady despite the tremor of vulnerability. "But nothing could have predicted the day I unexpectedly found my dear friend Max again. My life was completely transformed by our reunion, which made me realize the value of empathy even in our most mundane tasks." Stopped and inhaled deeply as the significance of what he had spoken hit home today. Stand before you as a guy who has discovered that true public safety entails taking care of the auditorium erupted in murmuring as I called on everyone to accept that fact, including the people and animals in our community, with approbation, but there was still a lot of anxiety after Dr. Adam Reynolds. His clinic took the stage with the award, and his kind demeanor and sincere apologies had sparked both praise and outrage. When I discovered Max strolling into my clinic, he talked with measured emotion while holding his collar, showed sympathy without realizing that he would be more than just a stray dog I found through. Unfortunate fact that he was the same dog that Officer Miller I had lost. I want everyone to know that I acted today with the conviction that no creature should be left behind. I stand ready to work and sincerely apologize for any inconvenience my oversight may have caused. His voice was calm, yet loaded, as we worked together to close the gap between our personal and professional responsibilities. Sincerely struck a deep chord with a large number of audience members at that time. A sudden dramatic change in tone broke up the tension in the room as Olivia Reed, the investigative journalist who had recorded each twist in this story and joined the live stream from her studio with a composed yet focused expression, declared that I had acquired additional explosive documents from the police's internal communications. These records from the department and Dr. Reynolds' clinic show that conversations toward adopting a more community-focused strategy was in place long before this incident made headlines, and they attest to the fact that many in our institutions have long been prepared to combine duty and compassion, and that this momentous occasion was unavoidable. Her declaration came with. Astonishment was spread among the crowd by screenshots and quotes from the private memos. According to this revelation, both groups had been subtly changing while maintaining their conventional techniques. A silence descended on the audience as the evidence emerged. The leaked memos, comprehensive strategies for community outreach programs, internal emotional intelligence training, and recommendations for law enforcement and the veterinary clinic collaborated on one very incriminating report that we must incorporate compassion into our daily activities. Otherwise, the distance between us and the people will only grow. The materials we served were unquestionably depicting internal strife and a slow transformation that had been. The new evidence exposed Ms. on Charlotte Green, the neighborhood activist who had been boiling beneath the surface, been in charge of organizing the town halls, took the microphone, and this is when she said, "The time has come for us to break free from." Her voice echoed throughout the auditorium. Concepts of impersonal authority that are out of date, as we have seen today, even in our compassion can thrive in the most regimented institutions. We must now proceed, dedicated to maintaining the rule of law while fostering the interpersonal relationships that unite us as a community. The gathering exploded in passionate cheers and applause during that thrilling moment. A subtle acknowledgement of the personal hazards was shared between Officer Miller and Dr. Reynolds. They had made, and the significant adjustments they were prepared to support their transition from regular duty to public. Vulnerability has prompted a change in public policy in addition to redefining their duties. This data would eventually compel the clinic and the police agency to launch test projects that integrate. The conference marked the start of a new age in public service by combining established procedures with community outreach. Ended. The gathered throng was bathed in a hopeful glow as the first rays of dawn began to filter through the tall windows. There was a sense of shift outside the atmosphere, and Max, who had been by Officer Miller's side, a silent witness to the entire experience, lay quietly and timeless representation of tenacity and the transformational potential of chance reunions and that pivotal catharsis. The community became more cohesive as everyone in attendance experienced the powerful effects of combining duty and compassion. They never before departed the town hall with a fresh resolve to create an atmosphere where professionalism and empathy could coexist peacefully. And it was a turning point that not only resolved the current dispute, but also cleared the path for long-term changes. A pledge that, as the dust settled on a day, the lessons learned would permanently alter the community's fabric. It had unpredictably changed people's lives and reinterpreted community values in the peaceful rural country roads and nearby. In the weeks following the historic event, Maplewood's institutions underwent a permanent transformation. During a traffic stop, an unexpected reunion put Officer James Miller and Dr. Adam Reynolds in the spotlight. With Max, the community gradually started to piece together a new story that respected duty and compassion while combining stern professionalism with the intimate, unsaid ties that bind us. Internal arguments that had previously threatened to divide the department as human people in the precinct ultimately developed into a significant shift in Officer Miller's vulnerability. Once viewed as an exception, it served as the impetus for a new training curriculum that focused on community involvement, and younger officers' emotional intelligence was influenced by his open reflections, began taking part in programs that helped close the divide between local citizens and police enforcement. Over time, even the doubtful veterans started to realize that real public safety involved more than just enforcing regulations. It was also about comprehending and relating to the individuals they assisted, and the department gradually incorporated these teachings into its fundamental principles, bringing about a society in which empathy was viewed as a strength rather than a weakness. Asset in simultaneously fostering resilience and trust, Dr. Adam Reynolds, The tragedy had a modest but significant impact on the veterinary clinic. While it first elicited conflicting responses from both employees and patients, eventually turned into a matter of pride for the doctor. Reynolds set up monthly pet appreciation days so that his staff and customers could exchange personal tales. These events not only raised spirits, but also reaffirmed the therapeutic value of animal companionship. The clinic's dedication to combining professional excellence with compassionate patient care realized that the clinic was a place where sincere empathy and professionalism coexisted, where even a routine Max the kind dog at the center might turn a speeding ticket into a celebration of life's most valuable relationships. Of it all became a timeless representation of hope and perseverance, and his presence was a daily reminder to Dr. Reynolds and Officer Miller that occasionally fate gives second chances. Residents started to acknowledge Max as more than just a pet. He was a silent symbol of strength, and members of the community frequently came together as a testament to the strength of love and a live bridge connecting two very different cultures. To see him sleeping contentedly behind the ancient oak tree at Maplewood Dog Park, a location that had come to represent the resuscitation of hope under hardship, as reported by Olivia Reed's perceptive reporting, was crucial in enhancing the impact of the narrative. Reed's pieces and, in addition to documenting Miller, Reynolds, and Max's emotional journey, the video portions generated more general conversations regarding the importance of empathy in public service. Her efforts sparked town hall meetings, community forums, and even local universities' scholarly debates over how individual experiences can influence institutional. Alter the hashtag #JMaxReturns to continue trending locally and bringing people together. The public outrage has led the local government to adopt a shared narrative of healing and transformation among the population. With the strong proof that was provided in the town hall meetings took action to guarantee that the lessons learned would, with long-term consequences, a separate advisory group was formed that included community leaders, law enforcement officers, and medical professionals tasked with reviewing and updating rules to promote these reforms, which focus on empathy and responsibility, seek to establish a future in which the professional and personal life could coexist peacefully, guaranteeing that the touching tales underlying each interaction were not buried in inflexible bureaucracy as the months went by. The palpable consequences of Officer Miller's patrols started to include community outreach initiatives as these developments became apparent. And the department's recent efforts facilitated the development of relationships between locals and police enforcement at Dr. Reynolds. Patient satisfaction and trust increased as a result of the clinic's enhanced emphasis on compassionate care. In quiet moments when the sun set, clients reported that the personal touch was crucial during difficult times. As Maplewood and the quiet bustle of neighborhood life returned, Miller and Reynolds considered how one unexpected a traffic stop had developed into a movement that changed not only their lives, but also the structure of their. They acknowledged as a community that although the path had been difficult and emotionally taxing, it had finally marked the beginning of a new era in which compassion and duty were interwoven to build a stronger. Before ending, they each offered a call to action for a more connected society. Miller, their community officer, urged residents to practice empathy in all facets of life by reminding them that each interaction is a chance to bond and get better. Dr. Reynolds encouraged both professionals and pet owners to show compassion by valuing the relationships that make their employment so fulfilling. As Maplewood progressed, this timeless tale of a speeding veterinarian, a sympathetic police officer, and a loyal dog serves as a reminder that even in the most mundane situations, life may surprise us by giving us second chances and catalyzing long-lasting change. Max's reunion with his owner was more than just a chance encounter. It was a ray of hope for a future in which every deed of compassion is honored and every heart is given the opportunity to mend.